Thank you for sitting down with me, Captain.
Just doing my job.
Alright, now could you give us a picture of what Verona was like before last month's incident?
How far back are we going?
It's up to you.
Okay. I first came to Verona about 8 years ago. I was transferred from upstate in Fairview because Verona had been having some trouble with gang warfare and needed all the help it could get. So myself, along with maybe 10 or 15 other officers from all over the state, came in to help bolster the numbers in the Vice Narcotics squads. They put me in what we call the Old City District because it's the richer part of town with the large villas and the many mansion-style homes.
So it was the safer district.
In theory, yes. But while there are less murders, there is far more intrigue. See, the two gangs, the Capulets and the Montagues, their family villas were located a block away from each other. Little skirmishes broke out practically every day.
But you managed to stop this?
Well, not me alone, but yes. When I came into the Old City District, we managed to clean it up in just about 18 months. I was commended for my efforts and promoted to lieutenant. They let me choose which squad I wanted, and I suggested we form another narcotics squad. The city liked my idea and gave me my own squad.
And I understand you were quite adept at leading this squad.
You're damn right I was adept. Within a few months, it became pretty obvious that the other narc squads were colluding with both the Capulets and the Montagues, pitting them against each other and turning a blind eye on their drug deals for a couple of easy bucks.
And so you called them out on it?
I did far more than that. I had the DA launch an investigation, and I testified against other officers who had been on the squad far longer than I had. I can tell you, I wasn't popular after that.
But you rose. How?
Well, you know what they say, honesty is the best policy. The commissioner had it in for me after I brought down most of his little buddies. He transferred me from narc back to vice and kept me in the old city where there was no longer much crime. But I took the situation and turned it into an advantage. When the old city captain finally retired, I pointed out that I now had the longest term in the precinct. And I'd wiped out more crime in my precinct alone than in half the rest of the city. So I was promoted to captain.
And when was this?
A year and a half ago. Of course, even then there were those who protested my promotion. I wasn't the most senior officer in the full force, and there were several downtown lieutenants who were vying for the spot. But my honesty paid off. Verona remembered me, and I got the old captain spot.
But the gang warfare resurfaced recently.
Correct. It appears once they took me off narcotics, the drug trafficking restarted. So I've been spending the last year and a half trying to shut it down at its source.
But your efforts ultimately failed.
I wouldn't say that.
You don't think your efforts ultimately failed?
No, I don't think that at all.
Please explain.
When I became captain of the old city district, the drug trafficking had resurfaced. I put a police car in every other block and within months had cut the trafficking in half.
Yet just days before the tragedy, a skirmish broke out right in front of the church.
True, but that wasn't my choice. The city council wouldn't let me keep a car in the same block as the church itself. So even though 4 cars surrounded the block of the church, no one had anticipated that a brawl would break out immediately in front of the church. Anyways, I got there before anyone got hurt, didn't I?
But the very next day, there were 2 murders in the park. Does that sound like a working crime policy to you?
Look, what do you want out of me? Would you rather that I policed every single person 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
I'm not saying that.
Then what are you saying?
Captain, your precinct had the lowest rate of crime before you took charge.
That's untrue. That's a fabricated statistic.
Oh?
My precinct had loads of crime when I took charge of it. The problem was the other officers were corrupt and never arrested criminals. Just look at the number of arrests made since my term. That number speaks for itself.
But look at the number of stabbings, murders, perhaps even rapes. Your strategy of brute force clearly did not work.
It worked as well as any other moral strategy would against the evil of pointless feuding.
You have no proof of that.
I didn't start the feud. It's impossible for a woman to try and run a police force without accusations of softness. And hey, if I had to be brutal in order to prevent my officers from questioning my authority, so be it.
And yet you showed weakness at a crucial moment.
Excuse me?
When you banished Romeo from Verona.
That was not a weakness. That was a suitable punishment for the man.
Perhaps it would be if he had followed it.
He should have followed it. Had he stayed away from Verona, the 2 of them would be alive today. I did everything in my power to try to stop the feuding. But that's not something the police have much power over. As long as these people continue to hate each other so much that they think that breaking the law is justified, as long as they continue to indoctrinate their children with a hatred of the other group, gang warfare will continue. Ironically, Verona is now safe thanks to a tragedy. Sometimes you just gotta chalk one up to God, I guess.
But you did show weakness when you banished Romeo instead of arresting him for murder.
No! I showed mercy.
But Captain Prince, it is not your decision whether to show mercy or not. Your job is to enforce the law. Romeo killed Tybalt.
In self-defense!
That's for the jury to decide. Your duty was only to enforce the law, and you failed to do so.
I made a perfectly logical decision. I decided that if Romeo left, Verona, a tragedy could be averted. If he had listened to my order, it would have been.
But, Captain, your police force clearly did not have the means to enforce your own proclamation. Therefore, you must have made a proclamation outside your jurisdiction.
Everything that happened within the old city precinct. Therefore, it was all within my jurisdiction. Whether or not it was within my power to do so, well, we'll see if there's an inquest into my actions, and that will decide whether I was right or wrong, not you.
Fine, ma'am. I eagerly await the results of this inquest. Until then, I have more questions to ask you. Why have you not arrested Friar Lawrence or Francine Jameson? And why has your office taken Benvolio Montague's word over other witnesses?
Arrest the friar? On what charge?
He gave poison to a 14-year-old girl and colluded with an exiled man for his return to the city, which led to the murder of Paris and the subsequent suicide of both the boy and the girl.
No branch of government is asking for me to arrest the friar.
Well, they should be.
Take that up with the mayor. That's not my jurisdiction.
Well, what about Francine Jameson?
Who?
Juliet's governess.
There is absolutely no proof of any wrongdoing on her part.
But she admits that she allowed Romeo...
Miss Walters, unless you intend on asking me a rational question, this interview is over.
I'm getting to it. Samson DeGanda.
That firebrand? I hope you're not believing a word he says.
I admit he is brash, but he makes a valid point. Why has your office not considered the possibility that Romeo may have raped and murdered Juliet?
That's outrageous! Character witnesses for the
But the witnesses are under oath. How can their testimony be believed?
My aides told me this was going to be a softball interview, and here you come accusing an innocent boy of rape and murder?
He did kill 2 people and then took his own life. Do you not think that means something?
I admit, his murder of Paris was rash and most likely unnecessary.
Well, Captain, if you had arrested him after the first murder, Paris would still be alive today. And so would Juliet, for that matter.
No comment! This interview is over.
Captain Prince, get up, follow her up. Captain Prince!
No comment!
Forget it, Jack. I think we've done enough anyway. As you can see, the police captain was unresponsive to my request for further information.